Think about the hardest working person you know. They work 12 hours a day. They never take vacations. They strictly follow all the rules, and they are barely scraping by. Now think about the richest person you know. Do they work 10 times harder? Usually, the answer is no. They work differently. Most people are caught in an invisible machine. It's designed to keep you comfortable enough that you don't rebel, but broke enough that you can't escape. I call them the traps. Today, I've decided to do something different. I've compiled my deepest analyses into one single masterclass to help you identify these hidden mechanisms. We are going to dismantle the 5 traps that destroy your wealth before you even build it. From the salary trap that tricks you into complacency, to the stability illusion that keeps you scared of true opportunity. This is the full map of the system you've been living in. If you want a different life, you must first understand the game you are playing. Let's get started. For many people, a high salary feels like the finish line. It represents success, security, and proof that years of effort have paid off. A bigger paycheck means a better apartment, a nicer car, more comfort, and the feeling that life is finally moving in the right direction. On the surface, the logic seems flawless. Earn more money and life improves. But something strange often happens to people with high salaries. Their income increases dramatically, yet their freedom does not. They work long hours. They carry heavy responsibility. They feel constant pressure to perform. And despite earning more than most people around them, they still cannot stop working. Their lifestyle depends on the next paycheck. Their financial structure still resets every month. This is the salary trap. The salary trap does not happen because people earn too little. It happens because salary creates the illusion of wealth while maintaining the structure of dependency. A salary is powerful. It provides stability. But it also creates a very specific relationship between time and income. Your earnings depend on your presence. Your value depends on continued performance. And your financial life depends on the system that pays you. No matter how large the salary becomes, the structure remains the same. If the work stops, the income stops. That structure limits leverage. And leverage is the force that creates wealth. Consider 2 individuals. One earns $70,000 per year. Another earns $400,000 per year. At first glance, the difference seems enormous, but structurally, they share the same financial model. Both exchange time for money. Both rely on continued employment. Both reset their income cycle every month. The difference is scale, not structure. The first person may feel financially constrained. The second may feel financially successful. But both remain dependent on the same mechanism. And dependency, even at high income levels, limits long-term freedom. This is why some of the most financially stressed individuals in society are also some of the highest earners. They have large incomes, but they also have large obligations, bigger homes, bigger expenses, bigger expectations, and those expectations lock them deeper into the salary structure. The salary grows. The lifestyle grows with it. The dependency grows fastest of all. At some point, the salary no longer feels like freedom. It feels like maintenance. Maintenance of a lifestyle that requires constant performance. And constant performance requires constant presence, which means the system continues controlling your time. Many high earners eventually realize something unsettling. Despite years of success, they cannot step away. Not for long, not without consequences. This realization often appears during moments of reflection. A vacation where work messages never stop. A health scare that raises questions about long-term pace. A sudden layoff somewhere in the industry. These moments expose a truth that salaries tend to hide. Income alone does not create independence. Structure does, and salary is designed to reward performance, not ownership. This does not mean salary is bad. In fact, it can be extremely useful. A salary can fund investments. It can finance asset creation. It can provide the stability needed to build something scalable. But when salary becomes the final destination instead of the starting platform, it quietly turns into a trap. A comfortable trap, a prestigious trap, but a trap nonetheless. In the next part, we will explore why intelligent, ambitious people willingly step into this trap, and why high income can actually make it harder to escape. It changes how we perceive risk. When someone earns a modest salary, the desire to improve their situation is strong. They look for new opportunities. They consider different paths. They imagine building something of their own. But when income becomes large, the psychology shifts. Instead of asking how to grow, people begin asking how to protect what they already have. Protection becomes the new priority. A high salary raises the cost of change. If someone earning $50,000 considers leaving their job to try something new, the risk is manageable. But if someone earning $300,000 considers the same move, the calculation feels very different. The lifestyle attached to that salary becomes difficult to replace. Mortgage payments increase. Daily expenses grow. Expectations expand. Suddenly, experimentation feels dangerous. The higher the salary climbs, the stronger this effect becomes. Many high earners unknowingly build financial structures that depend entirely on continued income. Large homes, luxury cars, private schools, frequent travel. None of these are problems by themselves, but together they create something powerful. A lifestyle that requires constant funding, and constant funding requires constant employment. This creates what economists sometimes call golden handcuffs. The salary feels like a reward, but it also becomes a restraint, because leaving that salary means losing the structure that supports the entire lifestyle. People begin making decisions based on preservation instead of possibility. They reject opportunities that look uncertain. They postpone entrepreneurial ideas. They delay investing in scalable projects. Years pass while maintaining a comfortable but dependent system. From the outside, everything appears successful. The income is high. The career is stable. The reputation is strong. But internally, something else begins happening. Freedom slowly decreases. Time becomes more controlled by responsibilities. Schedules become tighter. The ability to experiment shrinks. Many high earners realize they are working harder than ever, not because they want to, but because the system now demands it. Responsibility increases with compensation. More meetings, more decisions, more pressure, more expectations from employers and clients. Ironically, the very success that was supposed to create freedom begins consuming more time than before. At this stage, a quiet fear often appears, not the fear of failure, but the fear of losing the system that provides stability. And fear is extremely effective at maintaining systems, even systems that limit long-term independence. This is why high income can actually slow down wealth creation. Not because people lack money, but because the psychological pressure to maintain stability prevents them from building leverage. Instead of asking how to multiply income beyond time, they focus on maintaining the current structure. The salary grows, the responsibilities grow, but the structure remains unchanged. Time exchanged for money, month after month, year after year. Eventually, many high earners begin asking a deeper question. If income is high, why does freedom still feel limited? The answer lies in something most salaries never provide: leverage. And understanding leverage is where the entire financial game changes. In the next part, we will explore why leverage, not income, is the real engine of wealth. To understand why salary alone rarely creates wealth, we need to understand one word: leverage. Leverage is the ability to multiply the results of your effort. Without leverage, your output remains tied to time. You work 1 hour. You earn 1 hour of income. The relationship is direct, and while that relationship can produce a good living, it rarely produces financial freedom. Because time is limited. There are only so many hours in a day. Even the highest paid professionals eventually reach a ceiling. They cannot work infinitely more hours. They cannot multiply themselves. Leverage changes that equation completely. With leverage, 1 unit of effort can produce thousands of outcomes. The same action can generate results repeatedly. This is how wealth begins to scale. There are 3 primary forms of leverage in the modern economy. The first is capital leverage. This is the most traditional form. Money invested into assets that generate returns, stocks, businesses, real estate. These assets continue producing income without requiring daily effort. Once the capital is deployed, time is no longer the limiting factor. The second form is technology leverage. Technology allows one idea or one product to reach millions of people. Software is the clearest example. A small team can create a digital product once and distribute it globally. The same system serves thousands of customers simultaneously. No additional hours are required. This is why technology companies can grow so rapidly. The system scales faster than human labor ever could. The third form is system leverage. This happens when a structure continues operating, even when the creator steps away. Businesses with teams, content platforms, licensing models, automated services. These systems allow value to be delivered repeatedly without constant personal involvement. Each of these forms of leverage shares the same characteristic. They separate income from time. Effort still matters, but effort becomes an input that builds a machine rather than a transaction that resets daily. Salary rarely provides this separation. Salary rewards performance. Leverage rewards structure. Performance must be repeated continuously. Structure compounds over time. This is why someone earning a modest income but investing consistently in assets may eventually surpass someone with a much higher salary. One income grows through effort. The other grows through multiplication. At first, the difference appears small, but compounding turns small differences into enormous ones over decades. This is also why many high earners eventually feel trapped. They realize that despite working extremely hard, their financial progress still depends entirely on continued effort. If they stop working, the machine stops, and that realization leads to an uncomfortable truth. Income can make life comfortable, but leverage is what makes life flexible. Understanding this difference is the moment when many people begin changing their strategy. They stop asking how to earn more money this year. They start asking how to build systems that produce income for many years. But building leverage requires patience. It requires accepting slower results in the beginning, because leverage always looks inefficient at first. A new system may produce little income. An investment may grow slowly. A project may take years before it becomes meaningful. This early stage discourages many people, especially those used to predictable salaries. But compounding always begins quietly, and the people who understand this are willing to endure the slow phase, because they know what happens later. In the final part of this video, we will explore the moment when leverage finally begins to change everything, and why that moment arrives only for those who build patiently. For a long time, leverage feels invisible. You invest a little money, you start a small project, you build something outside your regular job, and for months, sometimes years, the results seem insignificant. The salary continues providing most of the income. The new systems grow slowly. This stage discourages many people, because human psychology prefers immediate rewards. Salary provides instant feedback. You work today. You are paid this month. Leverage operates differently. Effort today may not produce visible results for a long time, but the structure is quietly forming beneath the surface. Investments begin accumulating. Systems begin improving. Experience compounds. At some point, something interesting begins happening. The income from assets starts appearing, small at first, maybe a few $100s, then a few thousand, then something unexpected happens. Your financial structure begins changing. Income no longer arrives from only one source. The pressure attached to a single paycheck weakens. Options begin appearing, and options change psychology. When survival depends on one system, fear dominates decisions. But when multiple systems exist, decisions become clearer. You no longer protect a single income stream. You manage a network of income sources. This shift is subtle but powerful. Work becomes a choice instead of a necessity. You can take risks more intelligently. You can explore new opportunities. You can walk away from environments that no longer align with your goals. And this is the moment many people describe as financial freedom, not because work disappears, but because dependency disappears. The irony is that the path to this moment often begins while still working within the salary system. A job can be a powerful tool. It can fund investments. It can finance experimentation. It can provide stability while leverage is slowly being built. But the difference lies in how that salary is used. Some people consume it entirely. Others convert it into assets. One path maintains the system. The other gradually replaces it. Over time, this decision compounds. Two individuals may start with identical careers. One spends income expanding lifestyle. The other spends income expanding leverage. For many years, their lives may look similar, but eventually the structures diverge. One continues trading time for money. The other begins owning systems that produce money. And ownership changes everything, because ownership means your past effort continues working in the future. The real goal was never to escape work. The real goal was to escape dependency. When income depends entirely on time, freedom is fragile. When income comes from multiple systems, freedom becomes resilient, and resilience is what creates long-term security. In the end, the salary trap is not about earning too much. It is about believing that income alone is enough. Income improves life, but leverage transforms it. And once you understand that difference, the question changes. You stop asking how much you earn. You start asking what your income is building. Because wealth is not measured by the size of your paycheck. It is measured by how little your life depends on it. Most people believe poverty is caused by laziness. That is one of the biggest financial lies ever repeated. Look around carefully. The hardest working people in society are often the ones struggling the most. Construction workers, nurses, factory workers, drivers, small business owners, parents working 2 jobs. They wake up early. They go to sleep exhausted. They sacrifice time. They sacrifice energy. They sacrifice health. Yet many of them remain financially fragile for decades. If hard work created wealth, they would be rich, but they are not. This forces an uncomfortable question. What if effort is not the determining factor? What if the system rewards something else entirely? From childhood, we are programmed with a simple equation. Work hard gives earn money, gives build a good life. The equation sounds logical. It feels moral. It feels fair, but it is incomplete. Hard work increases income. It does not automatically increase leverage, and leverage is what builds wealth. There is a critical difference between effort and leverage. Effort is linear. You work 1 hour, you get paid for 1 hour. You work 10 hours, you get paid for 10 hours. The relationship is direct and limited. Leverage breaks that limit. Leverage allows 1 hour of effort to produce results beyond 1 hour. Technology is leverage. Ownership is leverage. Capital is leverage. Scalable systems are leverage. Without leverage, income has a ceiling, and effort has a physical limit. Hard-working people often hit that ceiling early, not because they lack discipline, but because they are rewarded only for time. Time cannot compound. Assets can. This is the first uncomfortable truth. The economy does not reward who works hardest. It rewards who controls scalable value. This explains something many people feel but cannot articulate. They work harder each year. They earn slightly more, but expenses rise at the same speed. Lifestyle expands. Obligations grow. Energy declines, and progress feels strangely flat, because linear effort produces linear growth, and linear growth struggles to outpace inflation, lifestyle creep, and aging. Meanwhile, individuals with leverage experience exponential growth. Their income is not directly tied to time. Their assets appreciate while they sleep. Their systems operate even when they rest. This is not about intelligence. It is not about luck. It is about structure. Hardworking people often optimize within a structure. Wealthy people design structures. One trades time for money. The other trades design for scale. This difference compounds silently over decades. A hardworking person may earn $80,000 per year for 20 years. A leveraged system may produce $5,000 per month after initial creation and grow from there. Over time, the gap widens. Not because one person worked harder, because one person built leverage. The tragedy is not that hardworking people lack ambition. The tragedy is that they were taught the wrong metric. They measure progress by hours worked. Instead of assets built, they focus on earning more, instead of owning more. And this confusion keeps them busy, but financially average. The system does not punish hard work, it simply caps it. And once you hit the cap, effort alone cannot break through. The real game begins where effort stops scaling. That is where leverage enters. But before we talk about leverage, we must confront something deeper. Why do intelligent, disciplined, hardworking people continue choosing linear income, even when they know it has limits? That answer is psychological. And it is the real reason many hardworking people remain broke. If leverage creates wealth, why don't more hardworking people pursue it? The answer is not intelligence. It is conditioning. From an early age, we are trained to value effort over design. In school, the student who studies longer is praised. In sports, the athlete who trains harder is admired. In jobs, the employee who stays late is rewarded. Effort becomes moral. Effort becomes identity. And identity is powerful. When someone defines themselves as hardworking, they naturally double down on effort whenever problems appear. Income is low. Work more hours. Promotion is slow. Prove yourself harder. Savings are thin. Take extra shifts. The strategy is always the same. More effort, but effort feels productive because it is visible. You can measure hours. You can measure exhaustion. You can measure sacrifice. Leverage, on the other hand, feels uncertain. It requires delayed results. It requires experimentation. It requires periods where effort produces no immediate return, and that feels dangerous. Hardworking people are often extremely responsible. Responsibility makes them risk-averse. Risk aversion keeps them in linear income. This creates the second trap, short-term security over long-term scalability. When you have bills, family, obligations, and expectations, the idea of uncertain income feels irresponsible. So you choose predictability. And predictability reinforces linearity. Another psychological factor makes this worse: social validation. Society respects hard workers. It understands visible grind. It does not always understand invisible building. If you say you're working overtime, people applaud. If you say you're building something that may pay off in 5 years, people question you. External validation pushes people toward safe, visible effort. Invisible leverage feels lonely, and humans dislike loneliness. There is also the comfort trap. Hard work produces steady income. Steady income produces lifestyle upgrades. Lifestyle upgrades create commitments. Commitments reduce flexibility. Once your life depends on a specific income level, risk tolerance shrinks. You no longer work to grow, you work to maintain. Maintenance becomes the mission, and maintenance is the enemy of scale. Because scaling requires temporary instability. Another hidden force keeps hardworking people stuck. They overvalue competence inside one system. If you have mastered your job, you feel powerful. You know how it works. You know how to succeed. You are respected. Starting something scalable means becoming a beginner again, and beginners feel incompetent. Hardworking people often tie self-worth to competence, so they unconsciously avoid environments where they are not already skilled. They stay where they are strong. But strength inside one system does not equal ownership of a system. The most dangerous phrase in financial life is this: I'm good at my job. Being good at your job increases income. It does not automatically create ownership. Ownership creates leverage, and leverage creates escape velocity. This is why many smart, disciplined individuals plateau financially. They are optimizing performance, not building leverage. They climb higher inside the structure, but the structure itself remains unchanged. And if you do not own the structure, you are still limited by it. The irony is painful. Hard-working people often have exactly the traits needed for wealth: discipline, consistency, persistence. But those traits are applied in the wrong direction. Instead of compounding assets, they compound effort. Instead of building scalable systems, They perfect linear performance, and the result is predictable, stable, respectable, financially average. The system does not punish them, it simply does not reward them exponentially. To escape this trap, something must shift, not effort, not intelligence, but orientation. The question must change from, how can I earn more this year, to, what can I build that continues earning without my constant presence? That question feels uncomfortable, because it introduces uncertainty. But without uncertainty, there is no scale, and without scale, there is no wealth. In the next part, we will break down exactly how leverage changes the game, and why small shifts in thinking can create massive long-term separation between hardworking and wealthy. If hard work has a ceiling, leverage is what breaks it. But leverage is often misunderstood. People imagine leverage as massive capital, big businesses, or complicated financial strategies. In reality, leverage exists in simple, repeatable forms. There are three primary types of leverage that separate hard-working earners from wealth builders: capital, code, and systems. Let's start with capital. Capital leverage means money working for you, instead of you working for money. When you invest in productive assets, businesses, stocks, real estate, equity, your income is no longer directly tied to your time. Capital compounds, time does not. A salary resets every month. An asset grows continuously. This is why two people earning the same income can end up in completely different financial positions 20 years later. One spends income, the other converts income into ownership. Ownership multiplies, spending stabilizes. The second type is code, and code does not only mean programming. Code represents anything digital that scales without proportional effort. A piece of software, an online product, a video that earns ad revenue, a digital course, a piece of intellectual property. Digital assets have a unique advantage: they can be replicated infinitely at near zero cost. This breaks the linear income model. You create once, it distributes many times. Even traditional professions can incorporate code leverage. A consultant who packages knowledge into scalable content, a professional who builds a digital audience, a creator who monetizes expertise. Code amplifies effort. The third type is systems. Systems are structured processes that function without constant supervision. A business with trained operators, a rental structure with management, a product distribution chain, a brand with recurring customers. Systems, separate effort from output. When output continues even when effort pauses, leverage exists. Most hardworking people focus entirely on effort. Wealthy individuals focus on building these three forms of leverage. Capital compounds wealth, code scales knowledge, systems automate output. The difference is structural. Hardworking earners increase input, leverage builders increase multiplier, and multipliers compound dramatically over time. Here is where many people misunderstand something critical. Leverage does not require quitting your job. It requires reallocating energy. Even a small percentage of time directed toward building leverage changes long-term trajectory. If 100% of your energy goes toward linear income, you remain capped. If 10 to 20% begins building scalable assets, the ceiling starts moving. At first, nothing looks different. Income remains similar. Effort remains similar. But beneath the surface, compounding begins. This is the stage where most people quit, because leverage feels slow initially. Hard work gives immediate feedback. Leverage gives delayed payoff. Delayed payoff requires patience, and patience feels uncomfortable in a culture obsessed with speed. But exponential curves always begin flat. The early stage looks insignificant. The middle stage looks promising. The later stage looks unfair. People often notice leverage only when it becomes obvious. They see someone successful and assume it happened quickly. They do not see the years of quiet building. This misunderstanding discourages them from starting. Another mistake hardworking people make is confusing high income with leverage. A surgeon earning $400,000 per year still trades time for money. A lawyer billing hourly still trades time for money. If income stops when effort stops, leverage is limited. High income without ownership is still linear. Linear income can provide comfort, but comfort is not wealth. Wealth is optionality. Optionality means you can choose how to spend time without collapsing financially, and optionality is built through leverage. The most powerful realization is this: you do not need to replace hard work. You need to redirect part of it. Hard work applied to leverage multiplies. Hard work applied only to salary caps The economy does not reward sweat proportionally. It rewards scalable impact. When your effort affects more people, more systems, more capital, income expands beyond your hours. That is the real game. Not working more, working in a way that detaches income from time. In the final part, we'll confront the uncomfortable truth that stops most hard-working people from ever making this shift, and what separates those who escape from those who remain stuck. At this point, the path seems clear. Build leverage, redirect effort, think beyond salary. So why don't most hard-working people do it? Because the real barrier is not knowledge. It is fear of identity collapse. For years, maybe decades, you have built a reputation around being dependable, responsible, reliable. You are the person who shows up, the person who delivers, the person who works harder than others. That identity feels solid. Leverage requires temporarily becoming uncertain. It requires saying, I don't know yet. I'm learning. I'm building something that may not work, that feels vulnerable. And hard-working people hate looking incompetent. There is another uncomfortable truth. Hard work gives moral superiority. When you work extremely hard, you feel justified. You feel disciplined. You feel ethical. You feel productive. Leverage does not always feel moral. It feels strategic. Owning assets that earn while you sleep can trigger internal conflict. Some people subconsciously believe money must be tied to visible effort. If income comes without visible labor, it feels undeserved, so they sabotage scale unconsciously. They choose grind over growth, because grind feels righteous, growth feels uncertain. There is also the comfort of busyness. Busyness protects you from reflection. If you are constantly working, you do not need to confront structural limits. You can always say, I'm doing my best. But being busy is not the same as building wealth. Busy people often feel productive while remaining financially average. The hardest truth is this: hard work is safe. Leverage is strategic. Safe paths rarely create separation. Separation requires asymmetry, and asymmetry feels unfair at first. The person building leverage may earn nothing for a year, then suddenly earn more in 1 year than a grinder earns in 5. From the outside it looks lucky. From the inside, it was structural. Most people never reach that stage because they quit during the flat curve. They see no immediate reward. They return to certainty. Certainty keeps them average. Another factor holds people back. Delayed gratification has limits when your environment rewards immediacy. If your peers are upgrading cars, homes, vacations, while you are quietly building assets, you may feel behind. Comparison kills patience, but patience is the gateway to leverage. This is where discipline becomes critical. Not the discipline to work more hours, the discipline to tolerate invisible progress, the discipline to delay visible success, the discipline to look ordinary while building something scalable. This is the real dividing line. Hardworking people are disciplined in effort. Wealth builders are disciplined in direction. Direction matters more than intensity. Running fast in the wrong direction only makes you tired. A small shift in direction sustained over time creates massive divergence. Here is the uncomfortable summary. Hardworking people stay broke because they maximize input instead of multipliers. They chase income instead of ownership. They seek stability instead of scalability. They value effort more than leverage. They protect identity more than they build optionality. None of this means hard work is useless. Hard work is fuel. But fuel without a scalable engine does not create distance. If you truly want separation, the question changes permanently. Not, how can I work harder? But how can I build something that works without me? That question is uncomfortable, because it requires strategic thinking, delayed gratification, uncertain beginnings. But that question is the doorway. The wealthy are not always the smartest. They are not always the most talented. They are not always the hardest working. They simply understand that effort must be multiplied, not maximized. And once you understand that, you cannot unsee it. You begin evaluating everything differently. Jobs become funding tools. Income becomes investment fuel. Time becomes allocation. Energy becomes strategic capital. The game changes. Hard work stops being the goal. Leverage becomes the goal. And that shift, small, internal, invisible at first, determines whether someone remains financially average or quietly escapes the ceiling that effort alone can never break. Most people believe struggle is the obstacle standing between them and a better life. They imagine that once stress disappears, once income stabilizes, once routines become predictable, everything will finally fall into place. Comfort becomes the reward they work toward, the moment when uncertainty ends and life begins to feel secure. And for a while, comfort feels exactly like success. You wake up without urgency, bills are manageable, work becomes familiar, your environment stops demanding constant adaptation, problems become smaller, more predictable, easier to handle, nothing feels wrong. Which is precisely why the comfort trap is so difficult to see, because comfort does not arrive as a warning, it arrives as relief. After years of effort, relief feels deserved. You finally understand your role, expectations are clear, the risks that once kept you awake at night begin to fade. Stability replaces uncertainty, and stability feels like progress. But beneath that stability, a subtle shift begins. Your life stops expanding and starts repeating. The same routines become permanent. The same decisions recycle daily. Weeks begin to resemble each other. Time moves faster, not because life accelerates, but because novelty disappears. Human psychology depends on challenge to create awareness. When challenge fades, attention narrows. You stop questioning patterns that once felt temporary. Comfort turns situations into identities. You are no longer working toward something new. You are maintaining something familiar. And maintenance requires protection. Without noticing, your priorities change. Instead of asking what could improve your future, you begin asking what might threaten your present. Decisions slowly reorganize around preservation. You avoid risks that once felt exciting. You delay changes that once felt possible. Ideas that used to energize you now feel inconvenient, not because you lost ambition, because comfort rewires perception. The brain interprets stability as safety, and safety becomes something to defend at all costs. This creates what psychologists sometimes describe as adaptation equilibrium, the point where improvement stops feeling necessary because discomfort is no longer strong enough to force change. You are not unhappy, but you are no longer moving. The danger of comfort is not failure, it is stagnation disguised as success, and stagnation rarely feels dramatic. It feels reasonable, responsible, mature. You tell yourself you are being practical. You have obligations now, responsibilities. Stability matters more than experimentation. All of this sounds logical, yet logic can quietly hide long-term risk, because the modern world does not remain stable for long. Technology evolves, industries shift, expectations change, skills lose relevance faster than previous generations ever experienced. The environment continues moving even when your routine does not. And when external change accelerates while personal change slows, vulnerability begins to grow. Comfort delays adaptation. It encourages the belief that tomorrow will resemble today. For many people, this belief holds true for years, sometimes decades. Life feels predictable enough that questioning the structure seems unnecessary. But predictability is not permanence. It is simply change moving slowly enough to go unnoticed. Imagine standing on an escalator moving downward at a very slow speed. At first, you barely notice motion. You feel stationary. Only after a long period do you realize you are no longer where you started. Comfort works the same way. It does not push you backward aggressively. It simply removes the motivation to move forward while the world continues shifting around you. This is why comfort affects intelligent people just as strongly as anyone else, sometimes even more strongly. Intelligent individuals learn how to optimize stable environments quickly. They become efficient, reliable, valuable. Their competence reinforces stability, and stability reinforces comfort. Success strengthens the trap. The better you perform inside a predictable system, the less incentive exists to question it. Over time, identity attaches itself to familiarity. Your role becomes part of how you understand yourself. Change begins to feel like loss instead of growth, and loss triggers fear. Not fear of failure, fear of uncertainty. Uncertainty feels dangerous because comfort has reduced your tolerance for it. When life becomes predictable, even small unknowns feel disproportionately risky. You begin waiting for the right time to change, a safer moment, more certainty, better conditions, but comfort quietly postpones every moment that might disrupt itself. The right time never arrives because comfort continuously resets the threshold of acceptable risk. Meanwhile, something else happens beneath the surface. Your adaptability, the ability to operate outside familiar structures, slowly weakens through lack of use. Just like muscles that are never exercised, flexibility fades without resistance, decisions become slower, confidence outside routine declines. Independence starts to feel theoretical rather than practical. This does not happen because ability disappears. It happens because experience narrows. And narrowed experience changes belief. You begin to believe stability is necessary rather than temporary. That risk belongs to younger versions of yourself. That change requires conditions you no longer have. Comfort turns possibility into memory. Yet the irony is profound. The same comfort meant to protect your life gradually reduces your ability to respond when protection is actually needed. Because eventually, change always arrives. Not dramatically at first. A new technology appears. Expectations shift. Younger competitors adapt faster. Systems reorganize quietly. Nothing catastrophic happens, but the environment begins asking for flexibility at the exact moment comfort has reduced it. And that is when many people first sense something unsettling. Not panic, not crisis, but awareness. A realization that stability may have been temporary all along. That comfort was never the destination. It was only a phase. And understanding that difference is the first step toward seeing the trap clearly. Once comfort becomes normal, something subtle begins to change inside the mind. You stop evaluating life based on potential and start evaluating it based on disruption. Instead of asking, will this improve my future? The question quietly becomes, will this disturb my current stability? This shift happens automatically. The human brain is not designed to pursue growth indefinitely. It is designed to conserve energy and avoid perceived threats. For most of human history, safety meant survival. Predictability meant protection. So when life becomes stable, the brain interprets that stability as success. And success triggers preservation. You begin protecting routines that once existed only as temporary solutions. Habits become permanent structures. Temporary comfort becomes psychological territory. Anything unfamiliar now feels like danger, even when it represents opportunity. This is the hidden mechanism behind the comfort trap. Comfort lowers your tolerance for uncertainty. At first, this feels positive. Anxiety decreases. Decisions feel easier. Life requires less emotional effort. But slowly, your threshold for discomfort shrinks. Challenges that once felt manageable now feel exhausting. Risks that once felt exciting now feel irresponsible. Change begins to require more emotional energy than staying the same. And because humans naturally choose the path requiring less immediate energy, stagnation becomes the default choice. Not consciously, automatically. This is why people often remain in situations they have already outgrown. Careers that no longer challenge them, routines that no longer inspire them, paths that once made sense but no longer lead anywhere new. From the outside, it looks like hesitation. From the inside, it feels like caution. But caution and comfort are not the same thing. Caution evaluates risk realistically. Comfort exaggerates risk to protect familiarity. The brain begins creating stories to justify staying still. You tell yourself change is impractical right now, that timing is wrong, that responsibilities make experimentation unrealistic. These explanations feel rational because they contain partial truth. But beneath them lies a deeper motivation, avoiding uncertainty. And uncertainty is precisely where growth exists. Another powerful effect emerges during this stage: identity stabilization. Over time, people begin defining themselves through the structures that provide comfort. Job titles, routines, environments, and expectations become part of self-understanding. Change now threatens more than income or routine. It threatens identity. If you have spent years becoming known as reliable, responsible, consistent, stepping into uncertainty feels like abandoning the version of yourself others recognize. Social reinforcement strengthens the trap. Friends and colleagues reward predictability. Society praises stability. Risk-taking later in life is often framed as reckless rather than adaptive. External approval quietly encourages internal resistance to change, and approval is deeply addictive. Humans are social creatures. Acceptance signals safety. When stability earns approval, breaking stability feels like social risk, even when the decision makes logical sense. This creates a powerful psychological equation. Comfort equals safety. Safety equals approval. Approval equals belonging. Leaving comfort begins to feel like isolation. But growth frequently requires temporary isolation, moments where decisions make sense internally before they make sense socially. Most people never cross this phase because discomfort intensifies before improvement appears. Early change feels inefficient. Progress becomes uncertain. Familiar rewards disappear temporarily. Without immediate results, doubt grows quickly. The brain interprets doubt as a warning sign and pushes you back toward familiarity. This is why comfort traps intelligent people so effectively. Intelligence allows you to construct convincing arguments for staying where you are. You analyze risks thoroughly. You calculate potential downsides. You imagine scenarios where change fails. What you rarely calculate is the cost of remaining unchanged. Because the cost of comfort accumulates slowly, it does not appear as crisis. It appears as gradual narrowing. Options decrease quietly. Flexibility fades. Confidence outside routine weakens. Years pass smoothly enough that urgency never becomes strong enough to force adaptation, until adaptation is no longer optional. The modern world introduces change whether individuals prepare for it or not. Economic shifts, technological disruption, organizational restructuring. None of these events require personal readiness. When change arrives suddenly, those deeply adapted to comfort experience shock, not because they lack ability, because their tolerance for uncertainty has been reduced for too long. Meanwhile, individuals who maintained small amounts of discomfort, learning new skills, exploring unfamiliar paths, experimenting gradually, adapt more easily. They never allowed comfort to fully replace adaptability. This reveals an important truth. The opposite of comfort is not suffering. The opposite of comfort is capability. Capability grows through challenge, experimentation, and uncertainty. It develops when outcomes are not guaranteed. Comfort removes these conditions, and without them, growth slows even while life appears stable. This is why comfort feels harmless in the present, but becomes expensive in the future. The cost is not visible immediately. It appears later, when change demands flexibility that comfort quietly reduced. And by the time most people recognize this pattern, the trap already feels deeply rooted. Because comfort was never just a condition, it became a way of thinking. At some point, a quiet realization begins to emerge. Comfort was never the problem. The problem was unconscious comfort. Comfort itself is not negative. Every human being needs stability at certain stages of life. Stability allows recovery, learning, and focus. It provides the foundation from which growth can begin. But comfort becomes dangerous when it stops being temporary. When comfort turns into permanence, adaptation slows down. And when adaptation slows while the world continues changing, vulnerability grows silently. The trap is not that comfort exists. The trap is believing it will last. Many people imagine that freedom comes from escaping discomfort completely, reaching a point where uncertainty disappears forever. Yet life does not work that way. Every stable period eventually meets change. The difference lies in preparation. Some people use comfort as a resting place. Others unknowingly turn it into a cage. The distinction is subtle. Those using comfort intentionally continue expanding capability, even while life feels stable. They learn new skills without immediate necessity. They explore ideas without external pressure. They maintain exposure to uncertainty in small, manageable ways, not because they enjoy discomfort, because they understand adaptability must be practiced before it is required. Meanwhile, those absorbed fully by comfort begin organizing life around preservation. Energy focuses on maintaining predictability. Decisions prioritize avoiding disruption. And slowly, stability transforms into dependency. Dependency does not feel restrictive at first. In fact, it often feels successful. Responsibilities increase. Others rely on you. Life appears structured and secure. But dependency reveals itself during moments of change. When circumstances shift, options suddenly matter. And options exist only if they were built earlier. This is why the comfort trap rarely announces itself dramatically. There is no clear moment when someone realizes they are stuck. Instead, awareness arrives gradually, a feeling that change has become harder than expected. Opportunities appear, but hesitation grows stronger. Not because opportunity disappeared, because tolerance for uncertainty decreased. The irony is profound. Comfort promises safety, yet long-term safety depends on adaptability. The variability comfort slowly reduces. This realization changes how progress is understood. Growth is no longer defined by eliminating discomfort. Growth becomes the ability to remain capable within uncertainty. People who eventually step beyond the comfort trap do not suddenly reject stability. They redefine its role. Comfort becomes a resource, not a destination, a place to recover, not a place to remain forever. They begin introducing small challenges back into life deliberately. Learning something unfamiliar, exploring new environments, building skills that extend beyond current routines. These actions rarely look dramatic from the outside, but internally, something important happens. Confidence returns. Not confidence based on predictability, but confidence based on capability. The belief that adaptation is possible regardless of circumstances. Capability changes how fear behaves. Fear does not disappear, but it loses authority. Decisions become less constrained by the need to preserve comfort. Curiosity replaces hesitation. Movement becomes intentional again. And gradually, identity shifts. You stop defining yourself by stability and start defining yourself by adaptability. Instead of asking whether life feels safe, you begin asking whether life remains expandable. Expandable lives evolve. Rigid lives eventually fracture. This is why the people who appear most resilient during periods of change are rarely those who avoided discomfort completely. They are the ones who maintained a relationship with uncertainty long before change forced it upon them. They never allowed comfort to become absolute. They stayed slightly uncomfortable, just enough to remain flexible. Over time, another insight becomes clear. Freedom is not the absence of structure. Freedom is the ability to change structure when necessary. And that ability depends on maintaining adaptability, even during calm periods. The comfort trap convinces people that stability equals arrival, that growth can finally pause. But life does not contain a final stable state. There is only movement, either intentional movement chosen gradually, or forced movement demanded suddenly. Those who move intentionally experience change as evolution. Those who wait experience change as disruption. The difference is rarely talent or luck. It is awareness. Awareness that comfort is valuable but temporary. Awareness that capability matters more than predictability. Awareness that the goal was never to remove uncertainty from life, but to become strong enough that uncertainty no longer controls decisions. And once that awareness appears, comfort loses its power to trap. It becomes what it was always meant to be, a moment of rest between periods of growth. Not the end of the journey, just a pause before the next direction is chosen consciously. Because ultimately, the greatest risk was never discomfort. The greatest risk was becoming so comfortable that you stopped preparing for change. And the people who continue moving forward are not those who avoided comfort, but those who never allowed comfort to define who they could become. Most people believe danger comes from taking risks, from unstable jobs, uncertain decisions, unpredictable paths. But the greatest risk rarely feels dangerous at all. It feels safe. It feels responsible. It feels like making the right choice, because safety, when repeated long enough, quietly turns into limitation. And most people never notice the moment when protection becomes restriction. They only notice years later, when change suddenly feels impossible. There is an idea deeply embedded in modern life. If you make careful decisions, stability will eventually protect you. Choose reliability over uncertainty. Choose consistency over experimentation. Choose the path that minimizes risk. At first, this strategy works perfectly. You build routines. Income becomes predictable. Life becomes easier to manage. Stress decreases. The future looks organized instead of chaotic. Nothing appears wrong, which is why the stability illusion is so powerful. Because stability does not stop growth immediately. It slows it gradually. The human brain adapts quickly to predictable environments. Once outcomes become familiar, attention decreases. You stop scanning for alternatives. You stop questioning assumptions. You stop preparing for change because nothing demands preparation anymore. Stability removes urgency, and urgency is often the engine of evolution. Without urgency, improvement feels optional. You begin optimizing comfort instead of expanding capability. Your decisions become smaller, safer, more efficient inside existing structures. You refine routines instead of redesigning direction. From the outside, this looks like maturity. From the inside, it feels like progress. But something subtle begins happening beneath the surface. Your tolerance for uncertainty shrinks. Situations that once felt manageable now feel stressful. Opportunities involving ambiguity feel exhausting. Even positive change begins to look disruptive. The brain starts protecting predictability, and protection creates inertia. Inertia is dangerous because it hides itself behind logic. You tell yourself you are being realistic, that stability is necessary, that risk belongs to earlier stages of life. These thoughts feel rational, yet they often emerge not from wisdom, but from adaptation. Humans are extraordinarily good at adapting to environments, even environments that slowly reduce future flexibility. The same mechanism that allows comfort also reduces readiness for change. And change, unlike stability, never stops arriving. Technology evolves, expectations shift, entire industries reorganize quietly. Skills that once guaranteed security lose relevance without warning. But stability creates the illusion that tomorrow will resemble today. It encourages long-term decisions based on short-term conditions. This is where the illusion becomes dangerous, because stability feels strongest right before disruption becomes visible. Imagine standing in perfectly calm water, moments before a tide changes. Nothing signals movement yet. The surface remains smooth. You feel secure because nothing appears unstable. But beneath the surface, forces are already shifting. Economic systems behave the same way. For long periods, stability appears permanent. Careers feel secure. Structures feel reliable. Experience feels protective. Then suddenly, change accelerates. And those most adapted to stability experience the greatest shock, not because they lack intelligence, because stability reduced adaptability. This is the paradox few people recognize. The safer life feels, the less prepared people often become for change. And preparation matters more than prediction. Many intelligent individuals fall into this illusion precisely because stability rewards competence. The better you perform within a predictable system, the more the system reinforces your behavior. Promotions reward consistency. Income rewards reliability. Recognition rewards predictability. Every signal tells you to continue doing exactly what already works. And slowly, success strengthens dependence. You become valuable inside one structure, while becoming less practiced outside it. Your world narrows without appearing smaller. Options decrease without feeling lost. Until one day, a simple question appears, usually quietly, often unexpectedly. What happens if stability changes? For most people, that question remains theoretical, until it isn't. And the moment it stops being theoretical is the moment the stability illusion reveals itself. Because stability was never meant to be permanent. It was meant to be temporary alignment between you and a constantly changing world. And confusing temporary alignment with long-term security is how safe choices slowly become dangerous. Once stability becomes normal, something shifts internally. You stop thinking in terms of possibility and start thinking in terms of preservation. This shift is subtle. At first, you still believe you are growing. Your income improves. Your routines become smoother. You gain experience. People rely on you. Your life appears to be progressing. But internally, your decisions begin filtering through a different question. Not, what could expand my future, but what might threaten what I already have. And that question changes everything. The human brain is not designed to chase expansion forever. It is designed to conserve energy and protect existing resources. When life feels stable, the brain interprets that as a successful outcome. Success triggers defense. You begin protecting your current level of comfort as if it were fragile, even when it is not. This protection rewires risk perception. Opportunities that once felt manageable now appear dangerous. Career changes feel destabilizing. Learning new skills feels unnecessary. Exploration feels inefficient, because efficiency now means maintaining stability, not expanding capability. This is how stability narrows vision. You begin optimizing inside a system instead of questioning the system itself. You refine processes, improve performance, strengthen routines, but you stop redesigning direction. And the longer stability lasts, the harder redesign becomes. Not because you lack intelligence, because stability increases attachment. Attachment forms quietly. It forms through lifestyle alignment. Your expenses adjust to match income. Your commitments adjust to match schedule. Your identity adjusts to match your role. You begin saying things like, "This is just how life works." And once identity attaches to structure, change feels like loss. Loss of status, loss of certainty, loss of control, even when potential gain exists. This creates a psychological paradox. The more successful you become inside a stable structure, the less likely you are to question it. Success deepens inertia. You become highly optimized for a specific environment. Outside that environment, your confidence begins fading through lack of exposure. Imagine someone who has lived in the same climate for decades. Their body adapts to those conditions perfectly. But adaptation also reduces tolerance for extreme shifts. Stability works the same way. It makes you efficient inside one set of rules, and vulnerable if those rules change. This is why safe choices can become dangerous over time, not because they are wrong in the present, because they reduce flexibility for the future. Flexibility requires discomfort, and stability removes discomfort. Without discomfort, growth slows invisibly. You begin preferring known outcomes over uncertain ones. You wait for better timing. You postpone changes that feel inconvenient. The mind tells you are being strategic, but often you are simply delaying uncertainty. And uncertainty does not disappear because you delay it. It accumulates. The modern world amplifies this effect. Technology evolves faster than human habits. Entire skill sets lose relevance quietly. Systems reorganize without asking for personal readiness. The world becomes more dynamic precisely when individuals become more stable. This mismatch creates fragility. But fragility is not obvious while stability continues. It becomes visible only during disruption. And disruption rarely announces itself politely. It arrives through layoffs, automation, economic shifts, health events, unexpected competition, moments when stability is tested. People deeply adapted to stability often experience shock during these transitions. Not because they lack ability, because they have not practiced adaptation recently. Adaptation is a skill, and like any skill, it weakens without use. Those who occasionally step outside comfort, learning new tools, exploring unfamiliar territory, building parallel capabilities, maintain resilience. They never allow stability to fully replace adaptability. But most people, once comfortable, stop practicing uncertainty, because uncertainty feels unnecessary, until it isn't. Another subtle effect emerges over time. Stability shifts your reference point. You stop comparing your current self to your potential self. You compare it to your past struggles. As long as today feels better than yesterday, growth feels sufficient. But progress relative to past hardship is not the same as progress toward future independence. This is the quiet danger of the stability illusion. It convinces you that improvement has reached its natural ceiling, that things are good enough. Good enough is comfortable. But comfortable is rarely expandable, and expandable lives are the only ones prepared for change. The most dangerous moment is not when life feels unstable. It is when life feels stable enough that questioning it seems unnecessary, because that is when preparation stops. And preparation, not prediction, determines resilience. At some point, the realization becomes unavoidable. Stability was never meant to be permanent. It was meant to be temporary alignment. A moment when your skills, environment, and circumstances happen to move in the same direction. For a period of time, everything works smoothly. Effort produces predictable results. Life feels manageable. But alignment is not the same as security. The world continues changing whether individuals prepare for change or not. And this is where the stability illusion quietly breaks. Many people believe resilience comes from building a perfectly stable life, eliminating uncertainty, minimizing risk, creating routines that protect against disruption. Yet resilience does not come from removing uncertainty. It comes from remaining capable within it. The strongest systems in nature are not the most rigid ones. They are the most adaptable. Trees that bend survive, storms that break rigid structures. Ecosystems survive through diversity, not uniformity. Human lives follow the same principle. When stability becomes rigid, flexibility disappears. And without flexibility, even small changes feel overwhelming. This is why safe choices slowly become dangerous. They work perfectly until conditions change. And conditions always change. The turning point for many people is not dramatic. It arrives as a quiet discomfort. A feeling that life has become predictable but smaller. That progress continues, yet possibilities feel narrower. You are not unhappy, but you are no longer expanding. This feeling often gets ignored because nothing appears broken. Responsibilities are fulfilled. Stability remains intact. From the outside, everything looks successful. But internally, curiosity fades. And curiosity is often the first signal of growth. When curiosity disappears, adaptation slows. When adaptation slows, dependence increases. And dependence quietly transfers control of your future to circumstances outside your influence. The stability illusion convinces people that control comes from predictability. In reality, control comes from capability. Capability means knowing you can adjust when necessary, that you can learn again, build again, redirect effort when the environment shifts. People who eventually move beyond the illusion do not abandon stability, they redefine it. stability stops being something they rely on completely. Instead, it becomes a platform, a place from which they continue developing flexibility. They maintain movement even when life feels calm. They learn without immediate necessity. They explore ideas without urgent pressure. They build skills that may not be needed today but expand options tomorrow. These actions rarely look impressive in the moment, but they change something fundamental. Fear begins to lose authority. Because fear depends on having only one path forward. Options dissolve fear, and options are built quietly, long before they are needed. Over time, identity changes as well. You stop defining yourself by your current structure, job, routine, or environment, and start defining yourself by capability. Not "this is what I do," but "this is what I can adapt to." That distinction changes how decisions feel. Change stops looking like threat and starts looking like movement, and movement restores awareness. You begin noticing opportunities again. You become more willing to experiment. Small uncertainties feel manageable rather than overwhelming. Life becomes dynamic again, not chaotic, alive. This is the paradox few people recognize. True security is not created by avoiding change. It is created by staying capable of change. The people who appear calm during uncertainty are rarely those who built the safest lives. They are those who never allowed safety to replace adaptability. They practiced flexibility before it became necessary. They treated stability as temporary, even when it lasted years. And because of that, when change arrived, they moved with it instead of resisting it. The stability illusion fades the moment you understand one simple truth. Safe choices are not dangerous because they are wrong. They become dangerous when they are repeated without awareness, when safety becomes automatic instead of intentional, because unconscious stability slowly removes the very abilities required to remain secure in a changing world. The goal was never to eliminate stability. The goal was to prevent stability from becoming dependency. And once you see that difference, your relationship with safety changes completely. You stop asking whether life feels secure today. You start asking whether life remains adaptable tomorrow. And that question quietly transforms every decision that follows. Because in the end, stability is not something you arrive at. It is something you balance. Too little creates chaos. Too much creates fragility. But balance, the ability to remain stable while still evolving, is what allows a life to continue expanding long after others begin standing still. And the people who understand this are not the ones avoiding risk. They are the ones who never stopped preparing for change, even when everything felt safe. Most people believe financial danger begins when they lose their job. It doesn't. The real danger begins the day they become comfortable inside it. Comfort is the most expensive illusion ever sold to the middle class. It arrives quietly. Your paycheck comes on time. Your routine stabilizes. You learn your tasks. Your coworkers know your name. Nothing feels urgent anymore. And that is precisely the moment growth stops. Because the human brain confuses familiarity with safety. You wake up at the same time. You follow the same route. You solve the same problems. Weeks turn into months, months into years, and something invisible begins happening beneath the surface. Your income moves slowly upward, but your dependence grows much faster. You are not building freedom. You are building adaptation. And adaptation is dangerous when the environment changes faster than you do. The modern economy does not reward loyalty. It rewards leverage. Companies restructure. Industries disappear. Entire professions are replaced by software without warning. Yet millions of people still operate under a rule that stopped being true decades ago. Work hard, stay loyal, and you will be taken care of. That promise belonged to a different era, an era of pensions, long-term employment, and predictable growth. Today the system has changed, but human expectations have not. This creates the first invisible trap: delayed awareness. Nothing feels wrong while everything is slowly becoming fragile. Imagine standing on a frozen lake in early spring. The surface still looks solid. You can walk normally. You feel safe because nothing has cracked yet. But underneath, the structure is melting. Every step is supported by thinner and thinner ice. Employment works the same way. As long as income continues, risk feels theoretical. But the moment income stops, reality arrives instantly. Bills do not pause. Rent does not negotiate. Time does not slow down while you figure things out. And here is the brutal truth few people accept. Your job is not your asset. Your job is someone else's asset. You are a line item on a spreadsheet designed to increase efficiency. When conditions change, efficiency demands adjustment, and adjustment rarely favors the employee. People believe effort guarantees security, but effort only guarantees exhaustion if it is applied in the wrong direction. You can spend 20 years becoming excellent at a role that the market no longer values. Skill without adaptability becomes obsolete faster than incompetence with flexibility. The world does not reward how hard you worked yesterday. It rewards how relevant you are today. This leads to the second trap: income addiction. A paycheck is powerful because it removes uncertainty. You do not need to think about survival every day. And while that sounds positive, it slowly weakens one critical ability: initiative. When survival is automatic, creativity declines. You stop asking difficult questions. You stop experimenting. You stop building alternatives. Why would you? The system works until it suddenly doesn't. Humans are incredibly adaptive creatures, but adaptation cuts both ways. The same mechanism that allows you to survive hardship also allows you to tolerate stagnation indefinitely. You learn to live within the structure provided to you. Your ambitions shrink to fit your schedule. Dreams become weekend thoughts instead of daily pursuits. Risk begins to feel irresponsible instead of necessary. And years pass. Then something strange happens around midlife. You realize your expenses require your current income level. Your responsibilities depend on stability. Your margin for experimentation has disappeared. You are no longer choosing your job. Your job is choosing you. This is the employee trap in its purest form, not physical restriction, but financial gravity. The more stable your life becomes, the harder it is to change direction. Many people assume wealth comes from earning more money, but income alone rarely creates freedom. Income creates lifestyle expansion first. Humans naturally upgrade comfort faster than they build resilience. A larger apartment, better vacations, new subscriptions, small conveniences that feel harmless individually but collectively transform flexibility into obligation. Each upgrade quietly increases the minimum amount of money required to feel normal. And once your normal becomes expensive, fear enters the equation. Fear of losing status, fear of stepping backward, fear of uncertainty. Fear is incredibly effective at maintaining systems. You begin optimizing for preservation instead of growth. You avoid opportunities that seem unstable even if they offer long-term independence. You reject experiments because failure feels too costly. You prioritize predictability over possibility. And slowly, without noticing, you exchange potential for stability. The tragedy is not that employment exists. Employment can be useful. It can teach discipline, structure, and skills. The tragedy occurs when employment becomes permanent identity instead of temporary strategy, because identity shapes behavior. If you believe you are an employee, you look for instructions. If you believe you are an owner, you look for solutions. One mindset waits for permission, the other creates options. The difference between these two mental models compounds over decades. Owners think in systems. Employees think in tasks. Owners ask how value is created. Employees ask how performance is measured. Owners build assets that produce outcomes repeatedly. Employees produce outcomes once and must repeat effort endlessly. Neither approach is morally superior, but only one creates independence. And independence is ultimately what every person seeks, even if they never say it aloud. People do not dream about money itself. They dream about control over time, energy, and decisions. Yet most financial advice focuses entirely on saving instead of building. Saving alone cannot overcome structural dependency. You cannot save your way out of a system that requires continuous participation to survive. Savings buy time, assets buy freedom. This distinction changes everything. When income depends entirely on effort, life becomes a race against aging. Energy declines, opportunities narrow, risk tolerance decreases. The same work that felt easy at 30 feels heavy at 50, but expenses rarely decline at the same speed. This creates pressure, not sudden, but constant, and pressure forces decisions. Some people respond by working longer hours, others chase promotions, many simply endure. Very few step back and question the structure itself, because questioning the structure feels uncomfortable. It challenges years of decisions, habits, and identity. But discomfort is often the first signal of awareness. The realization arrives quietly. Stability without ownership is temporary. You begin to notice people who are not trading time directly for income. Business owners, investors, creators, individuals whose earnings continue even when they are not actively working. At first, it looks like luck, then privilege. Eventually, if you observe carefully, you recognize a pattern. They stopped optimizing for income alone. They optimized for leverage. Leverage is the ability to multiply effort beyond time. Technology is leverage. Capital is leverage. Knowledge distributed at scale is leverage. Systems that function without constant supervision are leverage. Leverage changes the relationship between work and reward. Instead of repeating effort endlessly, effort accumulates. Instead of starting from zero each month, progress compounds. And compounding is the force most employees never fully experience because their output resets daily. Every morning begins at zero again. New tasks, new deadlines, new hours exchanged. The system is efficient but unforgiving. It rewards consistency but rarely produces escape. This is why many people reach later stages of life, financially stable but emotionally exhausted. They followed every rule, worked responsibly, avoided major mistakes, yet freedom still feels distant, not because they failed, but because they optimized for the wrong objective. They pursued security instead of resilience. Security depends on external stability. Resilience depends on internal adaptability. And in a world that changes faster every decade, resilience always outperforms security in the long run. The shift does not happen overnight. It begins with awareness. Understanding that your current structure is not permanent allows you to think differently about effort. Instead of asking, "How do I earn more this year?" the question becomes, "How do I reduce dependence over time?" That question changes behavior immediately. You begin learning skills that scale beyond location. You study how money moves, instead of only how money is earned. You observe systems instead of tasks. You start small experiments that may fail but teach independence. Progress feels slow at first, because independence grows quietly before it becomes visible. But something important happens internally. Fear begins to weaken, not because risk disappears, but because options appear. And options are the true opposite of dependency. Most people never reach this stage because the comfort of predictability is powerful. Routine sedates ambition. Familiarity dulls urgency. Years pass smoothly enough that change feels unnecessary, until change becomes unavoidable. Economic shifts, layoffs, health events, industry disruption. The trigger varies, but the outcome is the same. People who relied entirely on one income source suddenly must adapt under pressure instead of preparation. And adaptation under pressure is always harder than adaptation by choice. The lesson is not to reject employment. The lesson is to understand its limits. A job can fund your transition, but it cannot be the destination. Because eventually every system asks the same question. What happens if the paycheck stops? And the answer to that question determines whether you have built a life or rented one. At some point, the question stops being theoretical. You begin to notice small signals that something is changing. A new technology replaces tasks that once required entire teams. Younger employees arrive already fluent in tools you barely understand. Meetings become shorter, decisions faster, expectations higher. Nothing dramatic happens, yet the environment feels different. The ground is moving, but slowly enough that most people ignore it. Humans are remarkably skilled at normalizing gradual change. We adjust expectations instead of confronting reality. We tell ourselves things will stabilize. We assume experience will protect us, but experience only has value when the rules remain the same. When the rules change, adaptability becomes more valuable than seniority. And this introduces the next hidden danger, delayed vulnerability. Early in your career, losing a job is inconvenient but survivable. Expenses are lower, responsibilities are lighter, time feels abundant. But later in life the equation reverses. Obligations grow while flexibility shrinks. Mortgages, family needs, lifestyle commitments, all of them depend on continuity. The same event that would have been manageable at 30 becomes destabilizing at 50, not because you are weaker, because the system around you has tightened. Many people respond to this realization by working harder. They become more available, more reliable, more indispensable. But indispensability is often an illusion. Organizations optimize constantly. Efficiency rewards replacement, not loyalty. You may be respected, you may be appreciated, but appreciation does not appear on a balance sheet, and balance sheets make decisions. This is where the psychological conflict begins. You sense risk, yet change feels dangerous. Staying feels safer than moving, even when staying quietly increases long-term exposure. The mind prefers familiar discomfort over unfamiliar uncertainty. It is a survival mechanism inherited from a world where change meant physical danger. But in modern economic life, refusing to adapt creates the greater threat, because dependency compounds. Every year spent relying on a single income stream strengthens habits that make diversification harder. You become specialized in one environment. Your network narrows. Your confidence outside your role weakens. You begin to underestimate your ability to operate independently. This loss of perceived capability is more damaging than any financial limitation. People rarely fail because they lack intelligence. They fail because they no longer believe change is possible, and belief shapes action long before results appear. Meanwhile, time continues moving forward with mathematical indifference. There is a concept investors understand deeply, but individuals rarely apply to their own lives: concentration risk. Putting all capital into one asset is dangerous because outcomes become fragile. Yet millions of people concentrate their entire economic survival into one employer, one industry, one skill set. It feels efficient, until efficiency meets disruption. The modern economy rewards optionality, the ability to pivot quickly when conditions change. Optionality comes from diversification of capability, income, and knowledge. It is not built suddenly. It is constructed gradually through curiosity and experimentation. Small projects started after work. Skills learned without immediate payoff. Ideas explored before they are necessary. These actions seem insignificant in the moment, but they create alternative paths, and alternatives reduce fear. Fear thrives when there is only one way forward. The moment multiple paths exist, pressure decreases. This is why ownership changes psychology as much as finances. Even small forms of ownership, investments, side ventures, intellectual property, scalable skills, alter how you perceive risk. You stop viewing employment as survival and start viewing it as one component of a broader system. Your relationship with work shifts. You are no longer protecting a single lifeline. You are strengthening a network. And networks are resilient. Resilience does not mean avoiding failure. It means failure in one area does not collapse everything else. A diversified structure absorbs shocks. Income fluctuates, but stability remains. Ironically, this makes you better at your job as well. When fear decreases, performance improves, creativity returns. You take smarter risks because survival no longer depends on immediate approval. Confidence rooted in options feels different from confidence rooted in necessity. One expands possibility, the other defends position. Over time, another realization emerges. The goal was never to escape effort. Effort is unavoidable. The real goal is alignment, ensuring effort builds something that lasts beyond the moment it is performed. Most employees experience linear effort. Work completed today produces income today and disappears tomorrow. Ownership introduces accumulated effort. Work performed once continues producing value repeatedly. This difference appears small at first but becomes enormous over decades. Linear effort exhausts. Accumulated effort liberates. The challenge is psychological patience. Early stages of building leverage feel inefficient compared to a predictable salary. Results are uncertain. Progress is uneven. Many people abandon the process because comparison favors immediate income, but compounding is invisible before it becomes obvious. The same principle that grows investments grows independence. Small advantages, repeated consistently, eventually cross a threshold where momentum replaces effort. And when that threshold arrives, fear changes direction. Instead of fearing uncertainty, you begin fearing stagnation. You recognize that remaining dependent carries its own risk. The risk of reaching later years with limited adaptability. The risk of discovering too late that stability was conditional. The risk of realizing you built expertise inside a structure that no longer exists. This awareness does not require dramatic action. It requires intentional direction. You begin allocating time differently. Some effort maintains current stability. Some effort builds future flexibility. Gradually the balance shifts. Income sources diversify. Skills expand. Confidence grows from evidence rather than hope. And something subtle happens internally. Identity evolves. You stop defining yourself by role and start defining yourself by capability. Instead of saying I work as, you begin thinking I can create, I can solve, I can build. The difference sounds small but fundamentally alters behavior. Capability travels with you. Titles do not. Eventually you understand a truth that was hidden in plain sight from the beginning. Freedom is not a moment. It is a structure. a structure built slowly through decisions that prioritized resilience over comfort, adaptability over predictability, ownership over dependency. The people who appear suddenly successful rarely changed overnight. They spent years quietly constructing systems that reduced reliance on any single outcome. When change arrived, and change always arrives, they were prepared. Preparation does not eliminate uncertainty, but it transforms uncertainty from threat into opportunity. Because opportunity is simply uncertainty viewed from a position of strength, and strength comes from options. In the end, the question is not whether employment is good or bad. The real question is whether your life can continue functioning without it. If the answer is no, then stability is temporary by definition. True security is not guaranteed income. It is the ability to generate income under changing conditions. It is adaptability made practical. It is knowing that if one door closes, you have already built others. Most people wait for certainty before they begin building alternatives, but certainty never arrives. The future remains unpredictable, regardless of preparation. The difference is whether unpredictability meets fragility or resilience. One leads to panic, the other leads to possibility. And that distinction determines how the next chapter of your life unfolds. Because eventually everyone faces the same moment, a shift they did not plan, a change they did not expect, a realization that the structure they trusted was never permanent. When that moment comes, those who built options step forward. Those who relied on stability search for it again. The outcome was never decided in that moment. It was decided years earlier, quietly, through small choices repeated consistently. Choices about how effort was used, whether time was only spent, or also invested, whether comfort was protected, or gradually replaced with capability. The future belongs to those who prepare before necessity forces them to. And the path toward independence always begins the same way, not with escape, but with awareness. The awareness that your life should not depend on a single permission slip. And once you truly understand that, you stop drifting with the system, and start steering your own direction.